And I'm so excited to be joined here today by Emile Strand McCarthy, founder of FulFill More. And Emily is, there's a lot of, you are so busy. You do so many things. I'm so thankful that you're here today. Emily is a worksite wellness specialist, a health and life coach, an engagement specialist, a worksite wellness consultant, and she has 15 years of providing strategic business development, engagement for both employees and for clients, the client experience, and overall behavioral health. So thank you, Emily, for being here.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I am so happy to be here with Motion Connected. I've had such good conversation with you and also Sarah. It's so nice to join. And I also want to thank everyone for joining us today. I know we have a lot of great people with us today. We look forward to a casual, interactive discussion with you. It's just so nice to come together and collaborate. That's really what FulFill More is all about, just networking, collaborating, reaching out, outsourcing. So it's great to share that today.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. Well, thank you. So we're going to kick off today and just really start to talk about and discuss workplace culture and how to best support workplace culture. And we've had this webinar series for over a year. So we've really touched on a lot of different facets regarding culture. And what we're going to do today and what Emily's going to provide data and information on, it really brings all of our sessions together and puts it into a complete snapshot or a complete picture of what workplace culture is, what individuals are looking for, and what employers can do at the same time. And I just want to set a little intention and reminder that culture is not a static point. And I'm sure those of you on the call, you know this, right? We're all working towards the same thing. We're all working towards the same goal. But it is an evolution. It can be likened to taking care of your own health and well-being. You know, it really takes daily intention and daily activities and behaviors to provide that positive culture or that positive workplace. So Emily has put together 5 employee pillars that every organization needs. And Emily, I'm going to turn it over to you to start to go over these.
Yes, and I love your comments there, Amanda. That touches on the reason that I was somewhat inspired to think in such a basic manner, because none of these are new. But FulFill More is really based on well-being for organizations and individuals. And as my work grows and I work with organizations and individuals, I really am trying to compare typical well-being pillars to pillars for employee experience, because what I have found is not all organizations are ready to commit to an employee experience specialist or perhaps a wellness manager. Not all organizations are prepared to adopt, for lack of a better word, certain systems. And so I thought, well, what might be pillars for employee experience similar to the pillars we look at for well-being, but transcribed into more traditional conservative business language. So this is where I thought, okay, in my experience, and I am a full-time employee as well as having a consultant business. So I have a lens with both at all times. And with the team that I work, and what's very clear to me is that income, benefits, team communication / leadership communication, strengths in job, and flexible environment seem to be the top 5. When I spoke with Sarah about this, I actually had 3, and then I realized we can easily get to 5. But I've really appreciated looking at these pillars as a potential framework for companies when they are building employee experience, when they're onboarding, check-ins, exit interviews. How is their communication with employees related to all 5 on a consistent basis, right?
And looking at these, and as you and I have discussed the pillars further, what dawned on me is that these are very congruent with the dimensions of wellness or dimensions of well-being, whether you're looking at 6 dimensions or the 8-dimensional model, and that and thinking about it further, that's what not only are we striving for within ourselves, but also organizations are trying to do, and to build that positive employee experience, which we're going to talk about more, but also a positive and healthy culture.
Yes.
Okay.
And we'll talk also, Amanda, these are 5 basics, but just as well-being pillars can go from 5 to 8. We're going to talk here on the podcast about ways to customize the pillars for your organization, which I think is really important. I think these 5 should likely be part of your pillars, but customizing, adding a 6th, maybe going up to 8, we can talk further about as well.
Absolutely. So we're going to launch a poll first, and Emily, if you could just discuss, as this poll is being launched, the evolution cycle, and we'll go into a little bit more on the next slide, but what is the evolution?
So I grew up in a household where history was highly valued. You did not leave a dinner table without some form of history shared. So I do find it's important to me to look at, what am I thinking about? How has this started? And with that, since COVID in 2020, I myself have heard different terminology in the field. I feel we came out of COVID talking about wellness, remote work environment, mental health for employees. And now I'm hearing that more as well-being, and then also engagement, and it now seems to be under the umbrella employee experience. So the terminology has been shifting. I just wanted to look at, well, what is the history of it? We wanted to ask people with us today, what do you think is the order here in terms of what came first, the chicken or the egg? And we do have the correct order to share with you. The fascinating thing about the history is how far back it goes. I knew it had gone back to, say, the 1970s. I didn't know that it went as far back as 1776. So as I looked into this, and there's a lot of work done on this, we have a lot of resources cited. We have 2 in particular that are very comprehensive. There's a lot of work on this. All right, so let's see what we have. Organizational development, right, that's what I thought came first too. Human capital management, I didn't see the 3rd, but that's okay.
Oh, 3rd was corporate wellness, and it was tied with human capital management. And we'll go into the next slide with the correct order. And 1776 certainly surprises me as well.
Right, so human capital management came first based on my research. Now this could vary, I'm not an expert on all things, but from what I found, human capital management came about when an author, Adam Smith, published a book on the nature of wealth for corporate America. So that's how human capital management came about. Corporate wellness grew in the 1800s. The National Cash Registry, I have my little cheat sheet because I don't want to look over things, but in 1810, an 8-hour workday was suggested for corporate wellness. Also, Ford adopted that and limited to a 40-hour work week. So that was really important. And then also in the 1800s, we saw athletic associations, we saw morning and afternoon breaks for employees, but in the 1800s, things were very singular. So it was, let's not have employees smoke on the premises. It was a dabble here, a company there. It was really in the 1950s where the EAP came to be, Employee Assistance Program, and OSHA in the 1970s, that a holistic approach toward employee experience came about. And then in 1990, the term engagement came about. It was, coined engagement, which I think we all work off engagement still, but I view this history as employee experience in general. So there is a rich history to look at. I thought it was really interesting that, for instance, morning and afternoon breaks were offered so long ago, that there was that awareness that people needed time for self amidst the workday. And do we have any comments coming up to you with regard to the history?
Not as of yet, but I find this very interesting, and just I find it very interesting to know that it went that far back. I think there's some other things are coming to mind, whether it was, equality in the workplace. There are other things that we're certainly still striving for and continuing to work towards. I wonder also about accident and accident prevention, health and safety, and with OSHA. I'm surprised that came a bit later. I wish it came sooner. So I don't want to spend too much time on this because we have so much more information to go over. But thank you, Emily, for that evolution, because it's certainly very interesting, and I think we could talk about it for a good long bit. So in looking towards, where we are now and the dramatic shift that we've certainly had over the past 3 years, and what employees are feeling today. But what are the top employees that people leave jobs, Emily, and are these new reasons?
So I looked across 5. 5 is always my magic number. If I hit 5, I feel good about it. So I looked across 5 resources, one of which was from the Harvard Business Review in 1973, because I wanted, again, to add in a little bit of history. And what I did in working with Amanda is I compiled the shared denominator across all 5 resources, and we've actually put them under these pillars. So I want to continue to tie everything we talk about back to these 5 pillars, because with employee retention being such a central goal and joy of job, I do think the intention for employees to have a positive experience is really genuine. But with that said, pretty much every reason that employees leave jobs, and I think the last articles we included were the fall of 2022. So this is quite recent. They all do relate here to very known reasons that people leave. It's pay inequality, insufficient raise, benefits, toxic culture, not enough appreciation, not enough growth opportunity or sense of purpose. And then I really appreciated childcare coming up, and also a lack of a healthy, people refer to work-life balance, but I usually reverse that. I prefer to look at it as life-work balance, but we can see that all of the cumulative reasons still fall under these pillars. We're going to share a survey that I did through my network and FulFill More next. And there were a few comments in that survey that I'll share with everyone here, Amanda, that they were suggested pillars, but strangely, none of them came up as reasons people leave. And I know you mentioned to me that there's an onion here that we peel back layers. So again, we're looking at the pillars as the core, but we can see that there are additional components really important, but not necessarily why people leave. They're not important enough that people would leave. So that was interesting.
That is interesting. It is. It is. And I think before we move on to the next poll, I just want to mention and I've said this before, but if there's been any silver lining that came out of the pandemic, it is a greater awareness, of course, with mental health, and overall looking at stress, burnout, and those other metrics, and how they relate to high quit rates, low performance, low engagement. But I think where the concern is, and attendees, and Emily, please chime in here, is that the recent study by Gallup where employees are reported feeling 44% of employees are reporting more stress today than they were during the pandemic. So what we have collectively gone through and what is continuing to evolve and where we are now still very much has an effect on our performance and our overall well-being in the workplace.
Absolutely. And you said at the beginning, this isn't static. The evolution, it's daily. And what I would say myself is that data starts with us. We are individually a great source of data. How do we feel in the workplace? How would things feel if it was coming to us? Always starting with that question to view things is, to me, the best lens to have as well. You can never have too small of a data group. You could be speaking with 2 people. that's good data. You're getting a pulse on what's happening.
Right, for sure.
So we have another poll, Amanda.
We have another poll. If you could check or choose, you can choose more than one, the 3 employee foundations most valuable to you. So we have income, benefits, leadership, communication, using strengths in your job, and a flexible environment. We'll give this about 5 more seconds for responses to come in, and then we'll share. Okay, let's go ahead and share the results. What do you think, Emily?
I think this is pretty close to the data that I collected in the FulFill More survey. I'll share about that in a moment. Again, I continue to see leadership, communication, and strengths in job across all of the survey that I did. I think we have Ryan Wolf with us today from Gallup. We're going to cite that in our toolkit as a great way to assess employee strengths. I have a resource also for leadership communication we'll cite later. Flexible environment, that is key, right?
Yeah.
That's how we balance, as we say, life, work, healthy balance. So that is key. I'm not surprised to see that second. What do you think?
I think, oh my goodness, I apologize. My phone was not turned off. You know, I agree. I think leadership communication, and I would like to expand upon communication more into open communication lines, or that open door policy with leadership, present leadership. I think that certainly plays a role. And I'm sure many of you have seen, and there was a good comment that came in, and I'm going to get to you, Chantel. There's a really great report that came in recently from Deloitte, and I'm sure many of you saw this last year, and it was how the C-suite significantly underestimates how much employees are struggling with their well-being, while 56% of employees feel that their company's executives care about their well-being, while 90% of the executives feel that employees feel their leaders care about them. So there's such a great disconnect, and I think we're going to talk about that a little bit more later. I don't want to dwell on it too much, but it is certainly extremely important, and it's important also that that gap gets closed, that disconnect lessens. And Chantel said this also: leadership communication is an issue. Toxic employees, boundaries, and respect for employee work-life balance is what I have seen.
Chantel is amazing. Hi, Chantel. I'm so glad you're here today. Chantel is amazing. Her experience is amazing. And what's interesting as we continue to share the data from this survey is you will see leadership communication come up again in ways that Amanda is mentioning. So that we have a lot more to say about that one.
Let me go ahead and hide those results. Okay, so going back to Emily's FulFill More, the partner, reaching out to her partner network in the survey, what have you found those 3 most valuable?
And excuse me, of course I came down with a cold Wednesday night, so this was almost creature double feature, but I'm seem to be pulling it off. So what I found in response, and I sent this survey across, again, 5 sectors. 5 is always my magic number. So I sent it across education, business, legal, medical, and legal. And my pie wasn't exactly equal. I had a lot more with education and business than I did legal. I did get a fair amount from the medical field as well. But with that, the responses that came in for me with the FulFill More survey were that the most valuable pillars to employees are income, so that's aligned, flexible environment, also aligned, and leadership communication, also aligned. Strengths and jobs is going to come up again. That comes up in almost a controversial way where it's a plus and then not, it's a need. So that's one that has both ends going. But this was really similar. You know, it's interesting to see income because I think we all feel that the work we do has meaning And that's non-monetary. It's invaluable. The teams that we're on, you can't put a monetary value on a great team. But at the end of the day, we're providing for our families. So to me, this just shows how real that still is as a reason to be with your employer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to see that, to feel that value in a tangible way. Mm-hmm. Okay, so moving over to the organizational side, the 3 most emphasized pillars.
Yeah, so I wanted to see a difference between what was valuable for employees and what they feel their employer values. So this was an interesting switch. We don't see income coming up here, but we do have strengths in job. And then also flexible environment, that seems to be something felt by employees, that is well supported. And we see that was second in the poll we just took here. And then benefits, offering good benefits, having a comprehensive benefits package. That is what employees are feeling from my survey, that their employer really, is giving them with strength.
Wonderful. And then let's wrap up your survey results with this slide is very interesting to me. Looking at the pillars, and again, we're going to touch on that gap between employer intention and employee experience.
Yes, so here again, and I love data. I mean, really this survey would be excellent to do across each of those sectors and compare response from the legal industry to business to education. I just didn't have time to do all of that. I'm happy to serve, to provide rather the body of my survey to anyone here with us today. If anyone's interested, you can reach out to me. But it was crafted in an interesting way. So with these results, I asked, which pillar is strongest using strengths. And so this is where, if Ryan Wolf is with us, it's so interesting to see this because Gallup has done such great work on helping that come to be. And then also weakest income, but we know that is of the highest value for the employee. And for Chantel, this is interesting too, Chantel. Of course, you're spot on. I know Chantel well, and she's always spot on. But with regard to the gap between the employer intention and the employee experience, that leadership communication seems to be the biggest. And then what keeps you at your current job, flexible environment and using strengths is much appreciated. I think people do feel if they're getting both of those, it's a consideration in terms of staying where they are. But leadership communication is really something and team communication keeps bubbling up and bubbling up. And I will share when we get to the toolkit a great resource for that. There are many great resources for this.
Absolutely, for sure. So touching on that gap between employer intention and the employee experience, I'm going to launch this next poll. And let's see, what do you feel? Which foundation do you feel has the biggest gap? And you can just choose one for this. And
people can maybe chat with us, Amanda, about what is it about leadership communication? I have my own point of view there, which I can add and share, but I'm curious with people that have joined us, what is the lack? Where is the deficit there with regard to leadership communication? Because there are a couple different ways to view that one.
I feel like that could be a webinar in itself.
That could be a webinar. All of this could be a webinar, and that's why we're sticking to foundations today, but that's why we love this work. Every bit of it is so interesting.
Very much so. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll, and we'll share these results. And I don't think it's any surprise.
Isn't that interesting to see? And this is why I say, data starts with ourselves. When we ask ourselves, how do I answer this? How do I view this? That's always so wonderful. And really all data counts. But that is fascinating. Income and strength in jobs is tied. Okay. Flexible environment, another where maybe employers have promised more than they are actually giving. So I'm wondering, for people that responded for flexible work environment, how is that misunderstood? What are how are employer intentions being demonstrated? And where's the lack of follow-up?
Right.
Maybe we can get some feedback. I'm not seeing comments, so if you get any, you can go ahead and share, Amanda. Just interrupt me if you need to.
Sandy brought up a great point, and Sandy, thank you for bringing this up, is that communication, mid-level managers, middle management seem to be left out of communication in our organization. And I can say from my experience, that middle management, it's certainly a struggle. It's certainly a struggle with, there's a gap, there's a disconnect there between middle management and senior leadership, but also even just middle management seems to communicate differently for some organizations than in others. All right, and we have another great comment from Cynthia. Thank you. Often the employer isn't aware of the employee's strengths and skills, and this needs to be looked at more closely. Absolutely, that's very interesting. And Amy mentioned the disconnect I see in leadership communication is that leadership has their ideas of what is going on versus checking in directly with the employees. Thank you for those comments.
Those are great, great comments. Let me know if we have others. I don't want to interrupt that flow.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hide these results. That is what has come in so far, and I'll let you know if we get more. We're all on the same page here, right?
We're all on the same page, and we all, again, I work full-time as an employee with a lens where I see that middle management struggles. When we are in that form of communication, we either get different response or lack of response, and that causes a lot of frustration amongst a team because it seems to then remove leadership. And it also seems to slow down productivity because people have to go back and ask again. So it's a productivity issue. I do think a challenge with that is closing the loop in terms of being really committed to, if you are meeting as two stakeholders or C-suites, are you really taking time to communicate what came from that meeting to your middle managers, or are you assuming someone else might be doing it? So I think assumptions come into play there. I think not scheduling time with your middle managers comes into play there as well, even if it's just not timely enough. Another thing that I would say that I have experienced myself with leadership communication, team communication, there are times where there's a lack of follow-up. And I think follow-up is everything. So even if leadership can't provide a response, any response, thank you for letting me know, I'll get back to you by the end of the week. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. Can we talk about it and let's schedule something? When there isn't follow-up, I think that really triggers the frustration, which is why we see this coming up as a gap and an unmet need. Let's word it that way, because I think people then don't feel as included and they feel bottlenecked. It's frustrating, for sure.
For sure. And I agree. And I think that also that there's a disconnect at times between the bottom line, and that middle management have their own stress points. They certainly have their own objectives that they need to deliver on. And their senior leadership may be on not, I don't want to say another page. They want those deliverables, but at the same time, they're saying other things.
I agree. And I think, as we look at each component, we do realize that this really could be its own webinar, and we are going to touch on how a little bit here with do's and don'ts in the toolkit. I know there are so many great resources for leadership, for team communication. We both have those, both Amanda with Motion Connected and myself with FulFill More. Cynthia's here, she's with Owls. They're another great resource. There are so many resources to help organizations identify this, become aware of this, and create action steps to then improve it. I think that lack of awareness is a big issue. Once we have awareness, we have something to go by, but that lack of awareness is perhaps one of the biggest issues.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So let's go into, we could keep talking on all this for a very long time, but we want to get through our slides and definitely leave time for any questions or comments. So let's just go through, Emily, if you could go through your 5 don'ts for workplace culture.
Okay, so these aren't research, these just come from me, from FulFill More, but what I'm noticing, I think first of all that culture is really exciting right now. It's a ball of clay that can be molded in so many ways. It's such a great opportunity for every organization at this time, and there are so many, again, fabulous resources. With that, kind of like the world of technology making our life easier, there are downsides. And I think that some of the downsides, which is why we're offering this podcast on essential pillars, core pillars, some of these don'ts just relate to not overlooking the pillars with some of the more fun, engagement-oriented components that are out there. Not because they're not fabulous, they're really important, but they don't replace what needs to be available in the pillars. So don't number 1 is don't adopt too many systems at once. I think that people, when they're in a position for employee experience, can be pulled in many different ways. Leadership wants something from you, the DEIB department wants something from you, health, wellness, benefits, HR needs something from you. We can bring a lot of systems in at once, which can be overload for employees. I think also don't present a conflict of interest in daily schedules. So food trucks, yoga during the day, a fun email, hey everybody, let's leave 2 hours early. You know, there are ways to do this that don't conflict, but almost everyone would appreciate. But I also think that we can present things that take time away from tasks and employees feel that they have to get their work done so they don't get to what we're offering. Don't replace casual human touch point with software. I love software partners. Again, FulFill More is really based on that, but it doesn't replace as a leader, as a team member, as an employee, just socializing casually with each other. Don't talk and not walk consistently, which I think is a big component for leadership communication. It's really important to be ready to implement what you tell employees is available to them. And then last, again, don't neglect these 5 pillars that we're highlighting and replace them with programs and process. So those would be the top don'ts that I would think are good discussion points for any organization.
Absolutely.
Do you have a favorite there, Amanda, or one that resonates with you?
My favorite is social connection. And I think, you know, with flexible or hybrid work schedules, that's something that individuals may miss the most. And it brings to mind, there was a report from Business Wire that reported that 43%, I believe, of employees miss water cooler conversation. Like they just miss that random connection in the hall. And even though, you know, some of us may be in a very different work environment at this time, that need is still there and it needs to exist in some way. And I'd be interested, Emily, if you have any suggestions, and we can get that into the do's into the toolkit, but it can be done in a virtual environment. You just have to work harder at it. And if anyone on the call has suggestions for that as well, please let me know. Oh, yes, and we do. Thank you. I had a client make a return to an old school health and benefits fair, and the employees' reactions were so amazing. Thankful to be in person and to be able to interact. I love that. Our previous guest on the Great Culture webinar, Melissa Migliaro of Migliaro Consulting, based out of Pittsburgh. That's her bread and butter, and she's busy. They're getting back to that, so I can definitely relate to being in person and seeing that benefit.
Absolutely. And collaborating that way.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Okay, so let's move into our 5 do's, or Emily's 5 do's for workplace culture.
So these are similar, these are reversals in many ways. So I'm a big fan of check-ins, pulse surveys, consistent opportunities to voice feedback. With that, I think that again, all data is good data. The water cooler talk matters. If you're in a position where you hear things and you can think of an improvement, try to go for it. But I think that providing opportunity, that open door is so important. I think hiring really well for leadership, employee experience to be very approachable. This is really a hybrid role because it's really an interpersonal role where modeling is done for that, but it's also shared. I think hiring for that position, someone with formality, you just won't get the results. Leadership might, stakeholders might, but I don't think employees would feel connected. So it's just so important. And FulFill has a focus group. That's one of the services I provide, our original focus group, which I call the Great 8. We've talked a lot about how important it is to be this way now as a leader if you're going to remain in that position because it's so expected. Provide quarterly reviews. This is my favorite. I think we go over with onboard and possibly exit interviews, the 5 pillars. Everyone wants to know their benefits package and all the details. But when we do quarterly reviews, so often we're just looking at contribution areas. And again, we're not circling back to the 5 pillars, even asking your employee, how are these 5 pillars for you? Which are going really well for you? Are there any we could work to improve between now and the next quarter? This is the coach in me looking for what's going well, what's challenging. Let's have an action step, manageable action step. Again, with partners, seeking easy user platforms for content aligned with your top priorities. You don't need the kitchen sink, although you may feel that you do for all the departments. That might be its own conversation. And I understand that. But making sure what you put in front of employees really aligns with mission and the data sets, what employees are sharing. And then again, make culture fun, simple, natural socialization. Sometimes the last thing I want to do is engage socially. I can get tired, it's overwhelming. Sometimes it's what I love to do. And I'll invite people to come spend time with me. But I think keeping it really natural is important. There are introverts, there are people potentially on the spectrum working within your organization that communicate differently. So just keep it natural for people as opposed to let's all get together for this. That might be great, but not as an always, because that can be overwhelming for a lot of personality types. What do you think of that, Amanda? The social component.
It's definitely important, and I agree with you that it needs to be inclusive and fit all. And I think it's also I think it also needs to be okay if people don't want to socialize. If they're just coming in and doing their job and leaving, that there shouldn't be a stigma placed on that either.
I think the varied menu is so important. And with regard to remote employees, I'm really big on virtual coffees. That's how I became connected with Motion Connected. I reached out, let's have a virtual coffee. I mean, I love an excuse. But with that, I think letting people know, we just encourage everyone, have a virtual coffee with someone that you're interested in or in another department. Let's have that from 9 to 10 this upcoming Friday. I think that's a nice casual excuse for people and they don't feel they're neglecting their tasks, but we can build it in naturally.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And just to go back to number 1, I like how you said the check-ins, the pulse surveys, but also just the different methods and the different ways to obtain employee feedback is important, whether it's a casual conversation, whether it's a one-on-one, whether it's just an old school like comment box, leaving that out there, that all plays a role. In going back to one of our guests last year, Henderson Brothers, their director of HR, John DeSimon, does an excellent job at this. At really just having so many different ways of conversing with employees, of having those check-ins and that open conversation, but also gathering that data and doing something with it, and really listening to the needs and the voice of the employees.
And it can be Post-it notes if you're in person with the question of the day. Best part of your week. How can we improve meetings? What are you doing this weekend? If you could be anything, what would it be? I wrote on one of those myself, a lead singer, because I don't have a voice at all. But that would be a dream. But just a variety of fun with real experience areas that could be improved upon. And remotely, I think there are so many ways to post and share in social professional platforms. And as you say, compile it and really look at that. But from an employee viewpoint, make it fun. We see that even when we go into the public. Post-it notes are almost everywhere now. Everyone's looking for positive messaging and an opportunity to belong. So it's easy in that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so one thing that surprised me on this list of dues are quarterly reviews. Now, as an employee in my former position, we had twice a year reviews, annual reviews, and that was a lot for me. I was like, I can get away with one. Now,
at
the same time, we did have monthly check-ins, so there are different ways of going about. But why do you touch on quarterly? Why is it important to have that consistent of a review schedule?
I've worked in a lot of startups, pilot programs, launch. Things change. They change really quickly. And I hear from team members the frustrations, and yet they're not comfortable bringing it to leadership. They feel they don't want to send another email. Can I meet with you? I need to discuss this. I'm overwhelmed. I think quarterly and offering that is nice. It can be casual. It can be, hey, do you want to get together this quarter with your middle manager, your direct report? It could be varied, where once it's with your direct report, another it's with a board member or stakeholder. Maybe you choose who would you like to meet with, and opt out could be part of that. But I do see for some employees, if things are changing quickly, there is a need to have a comfortable open door, and not one that they're always initiating and feel now that they're the squeaky wheel when they're trying themselves to make it better. So that's why I have written quarterly. I think most employers are probably annual. So again, it's an opportunity to communicate a little bit more casually.
And I like how you said that it takes the burden off the employee to consistently be the one to bring something up, but also at the same time, given the past 3 years and the constant change, that it is a nice consistent schedule to have that touch point and just have that conversation. Okay, so let's go into our last poll, which is to pick one do that your organization is seeing results from at this time. And if you could expand upon that in the comments, that would be great. We'd like to hear more. Everyone wants to know what everyone else is doing and what's working well for them. So that's the best part about these webinars, is really the collaboration. So what do you feel is your do that's really taking off right now?
Yes, what is going well? And these are our takeaways. So for those that joined us that have a hard stop at 12:45, thank you so much for attending. And if you can stay with us a few more minutes to go over these takeaways, that would be wonderful. But if you cannot, thank you so, so much. And reach out to myself and Amanda for any resources. We're going to go over that with the takeaways. Alleer is a great company for leadership communication. I'll repeat that in a few minutes. It's ALLEER. Gallup, Ryan Wolf is a fabulous resource for using strengths in the workplace. There's a fabulous assessment I think should be part of all onboarding, but that's just me. So we can look at our results, but I just wanted to address that, Amanda, in case we have people that need to leave right away.
Absolutely. And we will, everyone that registered will receive a copy of this recording as well as the slides. So we're going to go ahead and share the results now. And we have a tie for providing check-ins, pulse surveys, feedback, and also making culture fun, simple, natural, and hiring well. That's wonderful, especially well, I guess we just entered into Q2, but that's a wonderful initiative, especially for earlier in the year. Okay, we do have a comment come in from Cynthia. Thank you. We do check-ins at the start of every team meeting. We indicate where we are on a scale of 1 to 10 and say why we are at this level. It helps to understand where people are at a personal level. And just that's very much putting on my health coach hat. That is how I typically would start sessions. It also brings to mind, you could start a meeting by asking, what color are you today? You know, what color are you feeling? And being, it really can reveal a lot and with one simple answer.
I love that. I love those questions. Cynthia is with Owls, and she's great. I love working with Cynthia and having discussion with her. I love that they do that at the beginning of their meetings. You know, what's interesting here, look at quarterly reviews, 0. And, you know, team communication, leadership communication, a gap. So I just want to highlight that. Do we have any comments on how people are making culture fun?
Not yet.
Okay, a colleague of mine, Lisa Noonan, I'm not sure if she's with us with All-Star Incentives Marketing. She does a lot. She has food trucks, she has yoga, she has so many fabulous opportunities that she gives employees. It's a nice mix. I really like what she's doing. I can always provide her name for anyone on the call as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, having those different opportunities and really meeting all employees, because you know you have to have a big variety to hit everyone for sure.
You do. You could have an art event in a conference room. You could have games in the conference room. You know, games are available from 2 o'clock on, and people won't feel badly on a Friday. They can play them virtually. There's a colleague of mine that is a coach, but she also leads art professionally, and her art has meaning. So she can lead group events, corporate events, sending materials to participants and then guiding that. What a nice way for employees to spend the afternoon together, and a nice thing to share in their home at the end of the day. So many fun ways. This is the fun of it all.
Absolutely. So we're going to get into the takeaways now. And again, as we start to wrap up here, please drop any comments, questions. If you are looking for specific resources, go ahead and drop those in as well. I just want to mention OWLS is Organizational Wellness Learning Systems. Cynthia, please correct me if I just butchered that, but I believe that's what it is. Founded by Joel Bennett. He's a fellow colleague, an NWI National Wellness Institute member. So just want to mention them. They are an excellent resource. Thank you, Cynthia. I got it right. Great. Joel will be happy to hear that. Okay. So Emily, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Cynthia, I'll go ahead and share organizationalwellness.com as in the chat. And Emily, if you would like to go ahead and take your takeaways, and then we have more comments coming in. Go ahead and keep them coming, and we'll definitely get to them.
And share organizations. Again, FulFill More is really built out from a networking standpoint and having partners. I only do certain things really well. So I love a network to outsource to. That's what brought me to Motion Connected. Please share that with us, and we can pass that along to everyone here on the call. We love to share those mutual opportunities because really it's all a body of work. And we have the same passion. So for me, again, simple, basic takeaways: invest in personal relationships. And these are for ourselves, but also for organizations. Let your employee story unfold and inform your decisions. Again, data sets are important because while we're suggesting 5 pillars, you might have a pillar, a suggestion I got in my survey because I asked, did we miss any? And one comment was societal impact. So if that were my organization and I saw that over and over, service opportunities and community partners would become a pillar for me within my organization. Build a resource library of partners. I think it's so important. Motion Connected, which we'll talk about, is a great partner. Know that to do things well, it's really nice to call on specialists in the field and let them be another voice for your employees and with your teams. It just makes it a little more authentic that way too, more exciting. A one-year roadmap is great. I love starting with that, revisiting that for organic shift, maybe between quarters or every 6 months, and then a 3- and 5-year plan. And then again, for leadership and team communication, communicate clear expectations and follow up. The follow-up is everything. When people have follow-up, they tend to be happy and they tend to feel seen. And I think that is most important. So this, again, is just from little old me in terms of the work I've been doing and what I'm so passionate about. And I hope that for all of us, it resonates. I think we all have such a shared goal, which is to ourselves have a positive experience and then share it with others. What do you have here, Amanda? I know Motion Connected, for instance, has their benefits IQ coming out, which I'm doing a demo of next week. I already have 4 employers that I plan to pass it on to.
Thank you.
And I love the health literacy and the holistic customizable program with Motion Connected. What do you think here is so important for you as you're working with clients?
Well, I think it's something, Emily, that you just touched on, and that is everyone wants to be seen and valued. And so many employers have wonderful benefits. They do have customized benefit solutions. They do have a well-being program. They're working on their culture, but again, there is this disconnect. So how can employers help employees be seen and valued? How can they communicate with them in a way that the employees will actually read and see and understand in a very simple way, with an easy to understand and use application? And at the same time, how can we build better health consumers? And that's what BenIQ is really all about with Motion Connected's new focus. It is to build those better health consumers. Everything right now costs a fortune. Everything is through the roof. But at the same time, making sure that employees understand what a deductible is, what a copay is, what is preventive care, what is covered, what isn't covered, and the difference between in-network, out-of-network, urgent care versus ER versus provider. It's really going back to those basic building blocks of well-being and of taking care of ourselves. And it all ties together. It all ties together. So we do have a comment from Amy that I want to get to. And I think, Amy, you bring up an excellent point. You have a smaller company and you have a culture committee. This is amazing. This is so great. You have a Workout Wednesday, virtual yoga Pilates, as well as weekly highlights. Next week is National Sibling Day. We're having a slideshow of our siblings where we can guess whose siblings are whose. I love that. And it really brings, I just want to mention that an organization of any size can be working towards a great culture and be working towards that social component as well, and bringing people together, which is so important.
I hope Amy shares her last name and where she is, because I want to be in touch with her. I love that you're doing that. And I think a lot of those translate really easily to a hybrid remote experience as well. Again, I think as we schedule these wonderful, wonderful opportunities, we want to make sure we carve it out of the workday and that leaders themselves are participating, so that it's really easy, because pretty much everyone's doing this from 8 to 9 in the morning or Friday afternoon, 3 to 4, but really encouraged because it fits the schedule so naturally, and just, again, across all personality types, something people can make a choice on what their level of participation might be. But I love the culture committee, and I know, and with many colleagues, then smaller committees are made specific to areas of interest within the organization. And that's another conversation, but those committees provide a sense of belonging and feedback that's so important as well.
Absolutely. So employee resource groups or ERGs are absolutely connecting individuals with same interests, similar goals, and really do go a long way. Okay, so if there's are any, I just want to make sure that we get to sharing Emily's latest blog on fulfillmore.net, and it's about what's in a name. And I have her LinkedIn here as well on the slide. And again, everyone will receive a copy of these handouts and of these slides. Feel free to connect. Can you tell us a bit about this latest blog post, Emily?
Sure. So the blog on Fulfill More is called Joyful Moments. And I wrote this blog for two reasons. One, because I thought it'd be fun to explain why it's named Joyful Moments. So you'll have to read this to know why I named it Joyful Moments. But then the other is that the name is inspired by a habit that I started 10 years ago in the workforce in terms of what I was sharing with fellow employees and the effect that that's had. And I also wanted to give a little hint here at how important it is to bring awareness through names. And this brings us full circle to why it's important to have a framework and to have pillars for your employee experience. Again, I agree with Amanda that the pillars we're sharing are so similar to those for well-being, but they have taken on a slightly different formality to be universally accepted, because not all organizations view well-being as the holistic picture. Livelihood is one of those pillars, but for some organizations, it's important to still see the nuts and bolts of a corporate framework. So I think these pillars provide that by naming them. So the blog has a few different meanings. Most of the things I do does, there's some hidden things. I hope you enjoy the blog if you read it, but mostly I hope that in joining us today, it prompts you to think about what are your core pillars. Do you have a framework for employee experience, not just well-being, but the employee experience? And what are your check-in points? Are you checking in on those specific pillars enough? I do want to mention again, Alere is a company that I was privileged to attend Steve McClatchy's training on effective communication. He is hysterically funny and he is fabulous. It's Alleer. He's an accessible, almost stand-up comedian. He's so good at delivering, and he's really spot on in terms of helping build effective communication. And then also Gallup, I just think that their strengths assessment, which I've done myself, is so beneficial. It's so positive. It's a great reflection to yourself, and it's a great talking point with your direct report. So wanted to share both of those too.
Absolutely. And their latest book, Wellbeing in the Workplace, it is a great read for, I'm sure, everyone on this call.
Beach read. It's another beach read. Wellbeing in the workplace. Who needs Danielle Steele?
So just to wrap up, Emily, do you have anything that we didn't get to that you would like to add, or tips that you have for organizations going from good to great? We'll wrap up here. And again, if you have to drop off, thank you for being here. Thank you for your time, for your participation. Yes, Emily, any last thoughts?
I think my last thought, again, is just to enjoy the awareness. To realize the awareness that you form starts with yourself and gets built from everyone that you have contact with. I love the ripple theory. I love the contagion theory. And so just allowing awareness to come and be a part of your day, and think about, with that awareness, how can you personally improve your day, your enjoyment at work, how you model that to your family and share that, and how it's serving your personal life. But start with awareness and enjoy the awareness.
I love that. Absolutely. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Please feel free to reach out to Emily or myself, connect with us on LinkedIn. And again, we'll stick around for just a couple more seconds. If you'd like to learn more about Motion Connected, please feel free to reach out as well. Our next webinar is scheduled for May 17th with Lucy Roberts from One Digital. She's a senior consultant for employee engagement and well-being. And we're going to talk about all things mental health. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And Lucy really has done a great job in addressing the disparities in the need for care, as well as access for employees to resources, and building strategies to bridge the gap to improve employee mental well-being and help all employees thrive. So hope that you can attend and check us out for that. We'll be sending the invites out shortly. And again, if there's no other questions, have a great day and have a great long weekend if you have one. Emily, thank you for your time and for your energy, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Amanda. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thanks so much.